Hey guys, this is Minnie back, and today we're going to be talking about your captain skills build for your Ohio's, your Georgias, and your Massachusetts from the American, what I like to call secondary battleship line. Before we get into that, as a quick reminder, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video if you like it. And as always, if you have any questions, make sure to check me out on Twitch where you can find me most nights. So, before Wargaming put out what is now considered the second line for the U.S. battleships, the heavy line of the Kansas, the Minnesota, and the Vermont. There was always what I considered to be the secondary battleship line of the United States, in my own words, which was, when we go to look at the tech tree here, the fact that you had at tier 8 you had the Massachusetts B. At tier 9 you had the Georgia, and at tier 10 you had the Ohio. And the reason I call them that is that, one, they were all designed with secondaries to have good secondaries on their ship. Both the Georgia and the Ohio boast 11.3 with flag and range boosting kilometer secondaries, and the Massachusetts, while not quite as big, still boasts impressive secondaries. Additionally, the Georgia and Ohio are a big brother, little brother combination. The Georgia hosts, if you compare it to the Ohio, it's very similar. The big difference is that the Georgia has a speed boost, which you can get up to absolutely disgusting lengths with the Cole modification to increase speed boost. Speed boost takes it up to almost 4 minutes, and the fact that the Georgia boasts 6 457mm guns, which is the second largest in the game, and the Ohio, while losing the speed boost, which does not give it quite as much ability as a brawler, boasts 8 457mm guns in the game, which is amazing. So now, the Massachusetts is a little different than those two, to be fair. When we go down to the Massachusetts and we look at the artillery, you see it's down to the 406s and a 3x3 combination, and that its secondaries, as we said, 9.4 kilometers, but still nice. However, especially with commander rework and the pain of getting a captain to 21 points, I run all three boats with the same commander, which is a little bit of a hybrid build for them. Admittedly, is it as perfect as I could make for each of them? No. But this is a build I really like and works well on all three of them still. Though the Massachusetts does deal with the fact that with its guns now being a little bit trolly, and the rework, it's not as in vogue as it once was. Anyway, looking at it on the Ohio, because that's the ship I like to use for this. Reminder, the Ohio is a Research Bureau ship, so you're much more likely to have the Georgia or the Massachusetts, though effective tomorrow, my time, since today is February 16th, 2021, they'll be gone. Let's talk about the captain build. So, first off, once again, I use Halsey because I find Halsey absolutely worth it for both his upgraded, his enhanced skills, as well as the potential to get these talents. So, as a reminder, Halsey you get through doing the hit hard, hit fast, hit often campaign missions, and it's a slog, but it's worth it. And he runs, for me, he runs on my Midway, my Ohio, my Georgia, my Massachusetts. I've run him on my FDR as well, and my Salem. So he does a lot of duty for me. Now, his talents, just to remind, are Implacable, which is Confederate, so that's really worth it for the fact that you get the 20% quicker main battery reload time, and then Untraceable, if you get the double strike, lowers your detectability range, which is rare, but still useful. So let's talk about what points you should be taking. First point, as always, should be Incoming Fire Alert. You need Incoming Fire Alert or Priority Target. Because you need to know when stuff is firing at you or you're being aimed at. I prefer Incoming Fire Alert because I find it to be vastly more useful than Priority Target, as I've talked about before. If you haven't watched those videos, long story short, for 1 point, I know when I'm getting fired at, which I find more useful than knowing how many are aiming at me, because if I'm keeping an eye on my mini-map and my mods, that should give me a pretty good information on how many enemies are shooting at me. Now, at the tier 2, I highly recommend Grease the Gears. It's an enhanced skill, 25% main battery traverse speed, and if you look, you start out with a 30-second 180-degree turn time. When we add that, it goes down to 24 seconds. That's big, especially when we look at maneuverability and see that our rudder shift time to shift from one end to the other is 18.6 seconds, so that brings it closer in line with that, and the fact that it's less than a kilometer to turn. So I highly recommend you take that skill for 2 points. Now, then you get to 3-point skills. What I recommend taking at 3-point skill level is long range secondary battery shields. This is going to bump your secondaries from 9.4 to 11.3. This is massively worth it for that extra 1.8 kilometers because of the fact that your secondaries, while secondaries aren't as good in the new meta that has happened with Commander Skills rework because of the dispersion changes, it is absolutely worth it to have that range to still be able to harass DDs and cruisers at that range. Additionally, you're going to want to be taking Adrenaline Rush for the quicker firing time, and you're going to be wanting taking basics of survivability. Now, this is where this becomes a hybrid. At tier 4, I take Deadeye, and here's why I take Deadeye. The start of the game, you're going to have so much opportunity to hit ships before you're detected, because if we look at our concealment right now is 15.6. But the other skill we take at 4 points is Concealment Expert, which drops us to a 14-kilometer detection range. 14-kilometer detection range versus a 21.6-kilometer main battery firing range. So you have a 7.6-kilometer range to play with, where you can be pushing up enough to get still have the Deadeye perk, but close enough to challenge and take advantage of the dispersion decrease to really just absolutely eviscerate ships. I've seen a big difference in my shots at range with getting multiple citadels on battleships at range, such as the Montanas and the Yamatos, at range. So I recommend taking both those. Additionally, by taking that closes it down to 2.7 kilometers difference between your detectability range and your secondary armament range. So it makes it a lot narrower window where DDs can sit and hide when they're detected and fire at you, where you're not firing back at them. Worth it, in my opinion. That leaves you with 1 point, which I spend on Gunfeeder, because being able to switch to HE shells in 27.5 seconds, and it drops it by 75%, so that makes it about 7 seconds, is king. Now, we're going to talk in a second about how we build, but let's talk about the other skills and why they're not worth it. I used to go with a full secondary build and just brawl flat out with the Ohio and the Georgia and the Massachusetts. But with the change to secondaries and the fact that the points are split out so much now, I can't justify it anymore. I think the range is worth it to take, but I don't think the improved secondary aim ring is worth the 4 points anymore, especially with Deadeye and Concealment as options. And I don't think going a straight secondary build is going to give you as good damage. It'll help you, yes, with DDs, but as I've found and my clanmates have found as we've experimented, you get more consistent damage and higher damage with the Deadeye build, and what I call more of a hybrid build. Close quarters combat, I've gone back and forth between Deadeye and close quarters combat, because the 10% quicker secondary reload time is nice. I mean, it's not that big, it's 0.3 seconds, but getting the 10% main battery reload time when you're within 11.3 kilometers is massive for brawling. The reason I don't run it is, like I said, I find Deadeye to be more effective because you start out in that 14 to 21.6 kilometer range away from enemy ships so that you can get the Deadeye perk, and then when the time comes, you close the distance, you charge the enemy ships, especially in a Georgia where you have the speed boost, but even in the Ohio where you don't, you charge the enemy ships and take advantage of the secondary batteries and the fact that at 9 kilometers, even with worse dispersion, or 11 kilometers with worse dispersion, you're still going to chunk ships pretty well. While Emergency Repair Expert is tempting, and a lot of people would say, hey, you should take this, since we're not doing a full brawler build, I don't find the extra repair party to be worth it as much. You're going to burn through probably all your heals, admittedly, but I think that this is not worth sacrificing for. And then once again, I don't run fire prevention on a lot of my ships, because even with the Thunderer meta of shelling you at distance, one, especially in a Georgia where you have speed boost, it's really easy to dodge, and even the Ohio you can still dodge pretty decently. But your goal is going to be more about, I mean, that's why you take the Concealment Expert, to stay undetected, and your goal isn't to be pushing in until some of that stuff has been dealt with. The close range HE spammers like the Des Moines or the Woosters or the Hindis or the St. Louis of the world. So that's why we take those. At the tier 3 level, super heavy AP shells, once again, fire and flooding recovery time, never worth it to increase that. not for 5% increased damage. If I just to show you, okay, my damage goes up by 788. So on a double Citadel, I'm increasing my damage by 1500. Yes, that's nice, but it's not worth the fact that now I've increased my flooding and fire time by that much. Enhanced anti-torpedo protection. Once again, you're going to be playing at range at the beginning. Yes, you're going to push in. It would be nice, but it's for when you push in for the rare times, you're going to be torped in a battleship. Not worth it. And then same thing with the expert AA marksman. I can't justify that 3 points on this battleship. That would be a nice 3 points on some of the other battleships that have disgusting AA to really enhance it and allow you to play solo against CVs, but not worth it. At the tier 2 level, inertia fuse for HE shells, not worth it. I mean, yeah, you have the secondaries that it's going to pen more with, but you're not going to be firing the main battery that often. Once again, sitting back at range means this is a wasted 2 points. Consumables enhancement doesn't give you anything except on the Georgia, where the 10% engine boost action time would be nice. But if I was running this strictly for Georgia, I would take that. But since I'm splitting this across all of them, not worth it. Same thing with Vigilance, 25% torpedo acquisition range, unless you're running the module that gives you the 1.8 kilometer guaranteed detection, and then you increase it out to 2.2 or so kilometers, 2.3 kilometers. This isn't going to be worth it, but once again, since you're starting away at distance, you shouldn't be too worried about torps. Priority target we already talked about, and once again with AA Gunner, not worth it in the way I like to build this. If you really didn't want Grease the Gears and you're going to sit more at range, probably take AA Gunner instead, because of the fact that if you're going to play at range and solo, you're going to be a target for CVs, and this will help. And if you're not worried about having to change quickly once you get in close, but since I like to push in close, I take Grease the Gears. Now, at the tier 1 level, the last point I take is Gunfeeder. And here's why. Like I said that switching time is critical already, so I find it. Pyrotechnician, nice for the extra chance for fires, but I mean, 10% chance of fire is nice, but you're still going to get a lot of fires even without that. Consumable specialist, yes, you have a fighter or a spotter, but once again, I find this, especially with the fact that it's 75%, it goes from 50 to 75% to just be worth more than that. Same with emergency repair specialist, and same with preventative maintenance. You're going to be running, this doesn't help your secondaries anyway, and you don't have torpedo tubes, so it only helps your main turrets, your steering gears, and your engine. And most of the time on a battleship, those are not getting hit anyway unless you're getting torped. Now, that's our build, but let's talk about the order we're going to build it in. First point, I send to incoming fire alert. I find that much more valuable to know, especially in the Thunderer meta, as I call it, than Gunfeeder. Second and third point, Grease the Gears. Third, fourth, and fifth point go to long-range secondary shells, and 6th, 7th, and 8th point go to basics of survivability. The reason for that is you want that secondary range increase as quick as possible, because you're going to inevitably need it unless you roll the game and you can stay at range the entire game. You take basics of survivability as well, because assuming a 10-point captain, that's 9 points, so you still have plenty of points. And you always want those restoration times being quickened, especially with the chance to get set on fire by a Thunderer. For your 10th, 11th, 12th, and 13th point, I recommend Deadeye, honestly. I like Deadeye more than Concealment Expert, because even though this is only a 6 kilometer range, 6 kilometers is still enough to use Deadeye usefully. And then for your next points, which is your next points, I recommend going to Concealment Expert. Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Your 14th through 17th point to Concealment Expert. You're not wrong if you'd rather go Concealment Expert than Deadeye, but I think Deadeye is more useful to be able to sit at that 21.6 kilometer range and be undetected than to have the Concealment Expert and be able to close in a little more. Up to you personally, you're not wrong either way. Then you just reverse it down to grab Adrenaline Rush, and finally Gunfeeder with your last one. Now, some people will recommend Gunfeeder then Adrenaline Rush, because Adrenaline Rush you won't notice too much at first, and Gunfeeder can save you against a DD when you can quick change to HE and absolutely eviscerate the DD. But with the fact that you're still doing 1,575 damage per gun if you hit a DD, yes, this is nice to be able to change to HE, but you're still going to take out about 8% take out anywhere between 5 to 10% of a DD's health with one hit of your AP. So it's not like you're unable to do damage. So I recommend Gunfeeder's the last one. Anyway, that is my Georgia, Ohio, and Massachusetts build for the American secondary battleships. Hope you enjoyed. Don't forget to subscribe and like the video. This is Mini, signing off.